Welcome, everyone, to another all-new edition of the Real Talk podcast with yours truly, Damian Nelson. Thank you so much for joining us here on Flag Day, June 14, 2016, on the PWR Now Network, podcast network of the Pro Wrestling Report, and also right here on our YouTube channel. I want to give everybody the opportunity to follow along in the discussion here, whether it be the comments on YouTube. Sincerely appreciate the hundreds of you who commented on the last Real Talk podcast. You can use those the comment fields here on YouTube, or follow me on Twitter at Damian Nelson on Twitter, at Damian Nelson on Twitter, DAMEONNELSON. Folks, got a lot to talk about today. As you know, a lot going on in the world. However, a lot going on in the wrestling world as well. We've got a brand new edition of Feedback Friday and Primetime coming to you this weekend from the Pro Wrestling Report. But three things I want to talk about here today on the Real Talk. First of which being the 3-hour tour known each Monday night as WWE Raw, which went into record low ratings territory just last night on the USA Network. There are reasons for it, and there's actually some good news in it, though. We're going to talk about the situation from Orlando this past weekend. I've got a lot to say about that. And also we're going to talk about TNA, Impact Wrestling. Had a great Slammiversary event this past Sunday on pay-per-view where we saw Bobby Lashley become the new TNA World Heavyweight Champion in that company. However, we've now learned that that event almost didn't happen, if not for a man who purchased a minority ownership in the company simply to ensure that the event could be produced. All that and much more here to come, and whatever else pops into my mind here on Real Talk. So sit back, relax, and let's get into the first subject, which is the 3-hour Raw. A lot of discussion when the ratings came out today of Raw dipping nearly below 2 million viewers nearly dipping below a 2.0 rating this past Monday night on the USA Network. A really rather uneventful show, to be honest with you. We saw Kane come back and reprise his role as the corporate Kane, but going into Money in the Bank, I think they did a lot of what they needed to do, but it wasn't one of those must-see Monday night shows. I mean, they didn't have Teddy Long again, so of course it wasn't. But be that as it may, there's two things to consider, though. I'm not defending WWE because I don't think Raw should be 3 hours. I think that's part of the problem, while their ratings are not as good as they once were. But 20 million people tuned in to the NBA game on TNT, which was a record for them, definitely taking away some of the Raw audience. And Raw actually achieved #1 status in the ratings Monday night in the key demographic of those between the ages of 18 and 49. So all things considered, WWE still delivering good for the USA Network and for themselves. However, you can't argue that, especially if you look at the trend of Raws of the last several weeks, if not months, that the third hour, being the least watched hour of the 3-hour period, is a problem. Now, it is also no secret that many within WWE, and Triple H has even alluded to it himself, that 3 hours is very difficult to program on a weekly basis on WWE Raw. The network wants this. It's good programming that delivers good ratings for a relatively low price. It costs $6 to $7 million an episode to produce shows like The Walking Dead on AMC, which deliver great ratings, but they come at a great cost. If you look at the rights fees that are being paid to WWE, which I believe are in the neighborhood of $60 to $70 million for 52 weeks a year of programming across 2 different shows, they're getting a pretty good deal with Raw, and it's a good deal for the network and a good deal for WWE. However, again, I mentioned this, I think, last week on one of our broadcasts. It is so damned difficult to commit my mind, my brain, my time, my energy to 3 hours of programming each and every Monday night. 3 hours of Raw. That's like going to see a movie every Monday night. 3 hours. It's brutal. It could be the greatest Raw in the history of Raws, and there have been some good Raws since going 3 hours, but that third hour, whether it be the 7 to 8 hour or the 9 to 10 hour in Central Time, is just difficult to keep up with because I've lost interest. And even this past week, it took me 2 days, yesterday and today, to watch the show because I was just done. I had to tune out. I'm like, God, there's 2 more hours of this. There's another hour of this. There's another. It gets to be too much. On Primetime last week, I asked the question of whether or not SmackDown was going to be the new Raw. And I think there's a distinct chance that may happen, folks. Here's why. SmackDown on Tuesdays, 2 hours long, fresh, new. You got the brilliance of Mauro Ranallo on commentary over there. Looks like Corey Graves may be added to the commentary team over there as well. A fresh new product, potentially with Shane McMahon running SmackDown. Who knows what's going to happen, but SmackDown could end up being the go-to show because it's easier to digest. Raw is a staple. Raw is the powerhouse of WWE, that's for sure. But SmackDown could slowly take its place, could rapidly rather take its place on Tuesday nights just because it's going to be that much easier to digest. A tight 2-hour show is going to be that much easier to watch. Think about NXT on a weekly basis. It's 1 hour. That's easy, super. Couple matches, couple promos. Easy to absorb, easy to commit to. I even think that their takeover events are only 2 hours long. I could be wrong on that because they go by so fast. I'm entertained. It may not matter as much, but less is more. In this business, you're always told, leave them wanting more. I can't say that Raw on any Monday night recently, or quite frankly, since they've gone 3 hours, have left me wanting more. I want less. I want less of Raw. I want 2 hours of Raw. And even with 3 hours, we still get 10, 15-minute overruns going into the 10 o'clock hour because they couldn't fit it all in 3 hours. Now with the brand split coming up, they're splitting their already used roster on both Raw and SmackDown across 2 different shows. How are they going to fill 3 hours of content on Raw with fewer people? Now that could mean longer wrestling matches. It could be more defined stories, more defined paths. It's going to be a challenge, folks, and it doesn't appear as if after this brand split, doesn't appear as if there is going to be a shortening of the program. Now, here's what could happen, and I think this would be great. If USA wants the programming in the time, NXT is ready for prime time. However, NXT is a big draw for network subscribers because you can only get it on the network domestically here in the United States. They could take a risk. And we know the Raw replays happening on Friday nights on USA. Perhaps that was a little bit of an experiment to gauge how many more viewers and how much more ad revenue they can generate with that repeat of Monday's program. But let's drop Raw to 2 hours. Let's make it a 3-day run for WWE each week. Monday Night Raw, 2 hours solid. When they need to, they can go into that overrun, take 30 minutes or whatever. 2 hours on SmackDown solid on Tuesdays. 1 hour of NXT on Wednesdays. Why not? Why not? Especially if what's Jerry Lawler apparently told a fan, this is just a report not confirmed, told a fan at a recent signing event that there would indeed be 2 different pay-per-view events, quote-unquote, per month from the respective brands, Raw and SmackDown. So there's your network draw, there's your network programming. Keep bringing people to the network that way. Release NXT, make it big time. Not that it's not big time, but make it bigger time. Put it on network television. But once they do that, they are also relegated to the content rules and the criticism and feedback of the network executives. So that may not be something WWE nor us, the fans, want them to do because it could dilute that red hot brand that is NXT right now. Speaking of NXT, I think it's after TakeOver the end, I think it's a foregone conclusion that we are indeed going to see Finn Balor on one of those 2 shows in the draft, and I can't wait because I think, especially as the Demon, that Finn Balor is Undertaker level stardom waiting to happen. Here's why. Undertaker the Phenom is a bit mystical, is a bit out of this realm, a bit out of this world, supernatural if you will. From the entrance to the performance to the way he carries himself, handles himself, and can back it up in the ring, Finn Balor could be that as well in the coming years in WWE. Now, I think one challenge that he may have is compared to The Undertaker, since I'm making that comparison, Undertaker is some 7 foot tall, however many pounds, but Finn Balor, quite frankly, folks, is smaller than me. Now, he's got a much more defined body than I do. He's in much better shape, but he's shorter than me, and he doesn't not quite as I guess bulky, I guess you can call it, as me. That's not a detriment. He's still a great performer in the ring. He's still fantastic at what he does, but comparatively speaking, that may limit him a bit, because if you look at those who have played those roles in the past, specifically, I guess you look at The Undertaker, you look at Kane, you can even look at a Bray Wyatt to a degree. You can go back to the Papa Shangos and the Adrian Adonises of the day. They were all larger talents that played larger than life roles. Now again, I'm not saying Finn can't, but it could be a challenge that the others have not endured that he may need to endure. So I plead, I beg, I hope, I wish, I want, I need for WWE Raw to go back to a 2-hour format. And if that means that we need to get another hour of programming, heck, put Superstars on the USA Network, put Main Event on the USA Network. That hour can be filled very easily by one of the other existing programs from WWE, dropping Raw back down to 2 hours, which would not and should not be seen as a step backward. It is more of a step forward, and will allow them to maintain the attention of the overall audience on a consistent basis on Monday nights on the USA Network. So perhaps this is all in the plans. We are not privy to that information. Perhaps this is going to happen when the brand split happens. We have no information that indicates that at the time. As a matter of fact, in the brand split press release, WWE indicated and said that they would still be providing 5 hours of new live content to the USA Network each and every week. Didn't specifically say Raw would remain at 3 hours and SmackDown would be at 2 hours, but they did say they would provide a total of 5 hours of programming. So, share your thoughts again right here on YouTube with your comments, or on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter at Damian Nelson on Twitter, at Damian Nelson on Twitter. And as I said, speaking of WWE, come this Saturday night on primetime, we've got Be the Booker for what is an amazing Money in the Bank card, to be honest with you. We might have to spend the whole show doing Be the Booker, because there are so many matchups, including the mega match between AJ Styles and John Cena, then the Money in the Bank match itself. A lot of great wrestling action to be presented Sunday on the WWE Network from WWE Money in the Bank. We'll have Be the Booker for that this Saturday on primetime. Of course, that being at 10 p.m. on My 24 Milwaukee, 10 o'clock p.m. right after Ring of Honor Wrestling on My 24 Milwaukee, and all over the channels of PWR, including Fight TV. And by the way, Fight had a call with them just a couple of days ago about some future plans, some really near future plans for the network, and you're going to see PWR take a much more prevalent spot in the scheduled programming lineup of Fight TV, and you'll begin to see some hints of that this weekend from the show. Very happy to be working more closely and working very diligently with the Fight FITE app to continue to deliver great content and programming as we try to do each and every week. So with that, folks, it's time to move outside of the wrestling realm, outside the ring for a moment, and then we'll go back into the ring after this. But of course, as you have heard, and of course the whole world has heard about the tragedies in Orlando, Florida this past weekend with the mass shooting incident where some 49 victims lost their lives innocently, and innocent victims lost their lives. So as if any of you follow me on Twitter already, you probably can tell this is a very deep and personal issue for me. I know a lot of people who live in the Orlando, Florida. And a lot of those people could have been at Pulse that night. And it was really heartbreaking to spend my morning, that morning when the news broke, 6 a.m., attempting to get a hold of all those friends, and luckily I was able to make contact with everybody, and they were all safe. It just really struck a tone with me that this attack happened, being the deadliest mass shooting rather, in the United States ever, and also happening in a place that I consider a second home, if you will, Orlando, Florida, where I have many friends down in that area. So our condolences, my condolences, and my deepest condolences go out to the family, the victims, the friends, and just sit back for a minute, folks, and just try to comprehend, and I think a lot of you do, the trauma of having witnessed that experience, having witnessed that tragedy go down. And people have talked about post-traumatic stress, and there's bound to be a lot of it from this situation, but just try to imagine the horror that these innocent people who were simply out doing their thing, having a night out, as many of us do, had to endure and will continue to endure, losing their friends and losing family members even. There was a mother and a son. The son survived due to the actions of his mother in that club. It's just an amazingly heroic effort by a lot of people, including the Orlando Police Department, and the stories that continue to emerge. I'm sure many of you have seen CNN's Anderson Cooper, who is just a damn good journalist, not a TV news reporter, but a damn good journalist. Found difficulty in maintaining his composure while reading the list of names on the air just last night on CNN. And it's just, the sad part of this is the fact that the spinning of this story, if you will, I'm going to lump them all together, the media right now, because it's been about, is he tied to ISIS? It's been about what his motives were. It's been a lot about the shooter. And quite frankly, he's dead. I don't care about the cowardly bastard that shot these people. Much more coming out as of late about him as well. And yes, that story possibly should be told at some point, but right now, and I do think a lot of outlets have taken that swing, but right now the story should be about the victims. We should all be hearing about the victims and the lives that were cut short and the lives that were lost. People as young as 18 years old lost their lives in that mass shooting in Orlando, Florida. They won't live the lives that many of us have had the privilege of living. And whether you agree with why they were there and who they were or not, no one can disagree that this was an amazing tragedy on American soil. People are using the term terror attack. I'd like to consider this more of a hate crime. It seems as if this location was targeted due to its clientele. It seems as if this person had some conflicted feelings of their own. It seems as if this was a person who was in no way, shape, or form truly associated with ISIS. While they did claim responsibility for the attack after he declared his allegiance to them and other groups that aren't ISIS, that are enemies of ISIS, by the way. A very confusing story, but now that it's being revealed, if you will, that he may have been gay, ISIS beheads the gay, and I'm interested to see what they do as far as accepting responsibility for this act that he alleged was done on their behalf after they find out the details of this. So I don't care, and this is the God honest truth, I don't care about ISIS. I don't feel that ISIS is a threat to my safety, okay? That's something happening in another country. And while I'm respectful of the challenges that it may be posing for some, I don't leave my house, I don't go to public events and worry about ISIS. Many of you know that we attended the Survivor Series in Atlanta, where there was a credible threat from ISIS against the event. I went. I was not worried at all. You know why? Because I have faith in my government. I have faith that they're doing all they can to protect us. And I also have faith that they're not telling us everything that we think we need to know. Because if they did, guess who else would know? The people they're trying to keep us safe from. So you can call it conspiracies, you can call it hiding, you can call it whatever. There's a lot you should know about what the government knows or what they are doing. Because they're protecting us as best they can. So I went to the Survivor Series. There were military personnel outside with machine guns in their hand. We had to go through metal detectors. I never once thought about ISIS. They don't concern me. ISIS is a fear-mongering term that is being used by not only the media, but by some political candidates to scare us. And the weak are very scared by ISIS. Terror and terrorism is another term that is being used to scare us, to scare the weak, and to make the weak follow the lead of the leaders who are trying to buy their way into their offices. That's my personal opinion. You can't, we can't, and George W. Bush said this after 9/11. We can't live in fear. We must continue. We must go on. And we must take faith in the fact that we are as protected as we can be. As the FBI director said, I believe just yesterday, they are looking for needles in a haystack of millions of Americans. And they have some 1,000 cases they're working right now. Yes, they investigated this person who committed this crime twice. But guess what? His First Amendment rights protected him from government action against the words he said, because he took no actions. It were simply words that he said. Now some people saying that, he was associated with the American U.S.-born person who went over and bombed and did a suicide bombing in Syria because they went to the same mosque. That's like saying if you go to the same church as somebody who ultimately ends up beating their wife, killing somebody, or doing whatever, that you're associated with them. They weren't friends. They didn't know each other. And FBI investigated that. Do I believe they're telling us the truth about that? Absolutely. You can't predict future behavior, especially this Constitution so many people lean on is built and designed in such a way that the government can't do a lot of the stuff that a lot of people want them to do. So argue however you'd like for or against it. But last time, and I think it was a Republican nominee for president who was talking about First Amendment rights and blah, 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 blah. And it prompted me. I said, I've never, not since school, have I actually read any of these amendments. Now, keep in mind, the amendments to the Constitution were done after the original Constitution, meaning they forgot some stuff initially, added some stuff. We've added some stuff along the way, but it's a 200-plus-year-old document that we're living off of in a world that has changed substantially since then. There weren't AR-15s in the time when the Second Amendment, which I'll get to in a moment, was written. It wasn't meant for that. I am a gun enthusiast. As a matter of fact, my favorite gun to shoot is an AR-15. I love shooting guns. It's a recreational sport for me. I don't need one. But talk about a gun that can do some damage. That's why it's the gun of choice. And there are many types of AR-15s, by the way. It's a gun of choice for a lot of these mass shootings that have occurred as of late. So back to the Second Amendment, which a lot of people are leaning on. I've seen a lot of tweets from a lot of people about, you can't take away my guns, it's my Second Amendment right. And they're using the NRA's version of the Second Amendment, which they didn't change because they can't change, but in their spinning of the Second Amendment and the rights that they were fighting for people to have, they omitted key parts of the actual amendment. So let me read the amendment to you right now. The Second Amendment to the United States Constitution, which is known as the right to bear arms, reads as follows. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Let me read that first part again. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state. This was written in the spirit of an uprising in this country and its citizens being able to defend themselves from said uprising. This was not designed in such a way to be interpreted as, I can go into my local gun store and 3 days before I decide to kill 49 innocent human beings, buy a long-form weapon. That's not what it says. Again, a 200-plus-year-old document. We need a backbone, by the way. We need a constitution. We need our Bill of Rights. We absolutely do, because you see what happens in the countries that don't have them. But some of these might need to be ratified or looked at again. And when you read the actual amendments, when you read the actual Constitution, I think you can interpret a lot more the spirit of the amendment versus the spin of the amendment. Many people who are out there spewing Second Amendment right, Second Amendment right, Second Amendment right, Second Amendment right, probably have never read it. It says more than the right to bear arms. Matter of fact, it says keep and bear arms. It doesn't even say about the right to bear arms. So, a lot of people have said it, and it's so true. If you're on the no-fly list, if you can't board an airplane because you're a threat to somebody somewhere, you shouldn't be able to buy a gun. That's common sense, isn't it, folks? Isn't that not common sense? It's not a violation of rights. It's what our government should be able to do to protect us. These same people who say we need to be tougher, these same people who say we need to do more, and these same people who cite the amendments that are convenient to them are not citing the amendments that keep us from doing the things they say we should be doing. I have said many times here on this podcast that I have aligned my political affiliation to nobody in the 2016 election. But I will tell you this. I will do everything in my voting power to ensure that the hate-mongering, bigoted racist Donald Trump never becomes president of the United States of America. He is a hate-mongerer. Listen to his words. He is appealing to a very small segment of our population. He is appealing to a very small segment of our population, the lowest common denominator, if you will, purposely and deliberately using bigotry by banning or attempting to ban an entire religion from this country. That's bigotry. And using racist rhetoric. Build a wall, not in Canada, but between the United States and Mexico. He knows what he's doing, folks. He's a smart man. Not smart enough to hold any political office. He couldn't be a congressman, let alone sit in the office of the presidency of the United States. And I think that his response to the Orlando situation, the Orlando mass murder, shows just that fact. You know, I follow politics as closely as many people follow sports. And that's my choice. And I don't profess to know more than anybody else. But what I do know is that too many of us simply take commercials and sound bites and form an opinion about somebody from there. There's so much research that can be done. It doesn't mean watch Fox News. It doesn't mean watch CNN. It doesn't mean watch MSNBC, because they're all spewing and spinning to get ratings as opposed to reporting. And if you follow me on Twitter, again, at Damian Nelson on Twitter, you know that recently I endorsed CBS News. CBS News has taken a deliberate approach to hard news, not sensationalization, and delivering the news. They've been a great source to follow during this story and this situation. You know, this, still talking about Trump, but talking also about the Orlando situation. In my mind, you can define it as a terrorist attack, but this was not a terrorist attack. This was a hate crime. This was a hate crime. Again, there's no evidence at this point that this man had anything to do with ISIS. He read some websites. He formed beliefs based on those websites. And if that's a problem for some of the candidates who are running for president, then I think we've got more than a Muslim problem, because a lot of people radicalize themselves to certain religions based on the internet. This was a hate crime. Pure and simple. It was a hate crime. And the truly most unfortunate thing about this crime is that the murderer is dead. Because there's a part of me that wishes he survived, so that we could, no matter what, all together watch him die at the hands of the United States of America. He was a coward who did not deserve to die in a cowardly way. He deserved to die in a public forum. When you take the lives of nearly 50 human beings, 50 human beings, you deserve to burn in public. The scum of the earth. That's what he is. And unfortunately, folks, the Republican candidate for president is not very far behind him. And it pains me to say that. But if you do research into the Republican candidate for president, you will see that he is a hateful man who has self-image problems. I mean, with that hair, of course he does. He has he doesn't like himself. He's thin-skinned. He doesn't have what it takes. Whether you like President Obama or not, whether you like Hillary Clinton or not, it takes a certain kind of person to be the president of the United States. Donald Trump is not that person, in my opinion. So vote for who you want to vote for. Do your research first. As long as you can do your research, as long as you don't let the commercials and the networks tell you who to vote for and form your decision, I support your vote for whoever it is you choose to vote for, including Donald Trump, as long as you have done your research and you feel that that's the best candidate for you. I want to make sure that point is crystal clear. I'm attempting to skew no one's vote. This Real Talk podcast is about my opinion and sharing my thoughts. I don't know who I'm voting for. As a matter of fact, in this session, for the first time since I've been legally able to vote, since turning 18, I might not vote. That's how difficult it is to pick from one of these two candidates. Where's Ross Perot when you need him? It'd be fun. Oh, he said, you people. I don't know how we do this to ourselves. Lewis Black did a great comedy bit about this, is how we are so advanced as a country, but we can't embrace a three-party system, and we pick two horrible people to be the candidate for the highest office in the land every single chance we get. It's pretty funny. As a matter of fact, I think there's a man out there he's no longer living, unfortunately, but that would make one of the most tremendous presidents of our time. And if you know his comedy, you know what I'm talking about. George Carlin. When he speaks, it is so non-PC. It is so spot on, dead on, right. He'd be great sitting in the Oval and learning us all, if you will. So I'm going to leave that there. Aside from saying this, my heart hurts for those who lost their lives in Orlando this past weekend. It's an unimaginable crime that unfortunately is becoming all too frequent here in the United States, and there's no words that anybody can say to make the situation better, but I hope that we make smart decisions going forward as a country in the selection of our leader and in the selection of our senators, because, oh, by the way, what nobody's talking about, at least that I've heard, is the vote that was on the Senate floor just last Wednesday, 3 days before this incident, to toughen up, not gun laws per se, but the ability for people to get guns, to tighten that up a little bit, was voted down. Voted down by all but 4 Republicans. And just about everybody who voted against these enhanced laws received financial contributions from the National Rifle Association in their latest election campaign. Is it not right in front of us, folks? That's one example of the broken political system that we have in this country. Money should not be able to buy power, yet it does time and time again on both sides of the aisle. So with that, we're going to close out that story. We're going to move back into the ring and talk a little bit more wrestling. And a couple of weeks ago, we presented an episode titled The Death of TNA Wrestling. It was a Feedback Friday, and we shared with you our perspectives on what the challenges with the company were and talked about some of the financial challenges that the company was having as well. Well, some of you challenged that report. Some of you said we were wrong. Some of you said we were lying. Some of you said we didn't know. Some of you said that they didn't have pay issues. Well, it has now been revealed publicly by the chief financial officer of the parent company of TNA that Slammiversary almost didn't happen this weekend because they didn't have enough money for the production to do it. They didn't have enough money for the soundstage. They didn't have enough money for the production team. They didn't have enough money to set up the soundstage. They didn't have enough money to do Slammiversary on pay-per-view. Interestingly enough, it was revealed late last week that Billy Corgan, former frontman of Smashing Pumpkins, had purchased a minority interest in the company, TNA Impact Wrestling. Apparently, he purchased that minority interest in the company to give the company some money to get through this latest series of tapings, including Slammiversary this past weekend. It's a bad spot to be in. TNA is on, it doesn't give me any joy to say this, but they are on they are on death's door. They deliver a fantastic wrestling show Sunday night on pay-per-view. A great show. And again, I've said, the problem is not in the ropes in the ring. The problem's in the office. High up in the office. They delivered such a great show, yet they're financially unable to continue much further without a major investor at this time. It's a sad state of affairs for that company. It really is. And I want TNA to continue again so we can get, as fans, we can be recipients of great wrestling as we were this past Sunday night and as we probably will be again tonight on Impact when they announce their next Hall of Fame inductee. I'm sure David Hero will have something to say about that this Saturday on Primetime, if not this Friday on Feedback Friday. But, it's going to take a lot for them to find an investor who's going to invest in that company without making material changes to the structure of the company and the leadership of the company. That is not a knock on the leadership of the company. That is not a knock on TNA President Dixie Carter. It's just if people are investing a lot of their own money for a majority interest in the company or for a substantial interest in the company, they're probably going to want to be in control of it as well because it's their money and they don't want to see it squandered. Not that it would be, but they want to be in control of it. That's how these things generally work. So best of wishes to TNA Impact Wrestling. We hope that they find an investor. We hope that they can continue as a viable wrestling option, if you will, Tuesday nights on Pop TV, and can continue to deliver to us what has been great weekly television and great pay-per-view television in Slammiversary this past weekend. So with that, folks, again, I want to remind you we're back on the air this upcoming weekend, Friday night. It's a new Be the Booker, 5 o'clock p.m. Central Standard Time. New Be the Booker with your comments. We'll probably try to include some comments from this podcast as well. And also on Saturday, it's a brand new edition of Prime Time. Again, that airing at 10 o'clock p.m. Central Time, available across the channels of Pro Wrestling Report, My24 Milwaukee, and also on the FITE Fight TV app. So until then, in the meantime and the in-between time, leave your comments here. Follow me on Twitter at Damian Nelson. Feel free to engage in conversations with me. It's a lot easier on Twitter than it is on YouTube at Damian Nelson. I'll be glad to have a constructive, non-name calling conversation with anybody who would like to have it regarding my comments here today or anything else that you have on your mind. With that, I bid you peace. Farewell. We'll see you Friday we'll see you Thursday on the Double D podcast. Who knows what we're going to talk about then, folks. We'll see you then here on the PWR Now Network.